Do you know what it feels like to wake up and not remember who you are? Achilles, the greatest warrior of Greece, once feared by gods and men alike, now lies in the shadows of Mount Ida, his mind blank, his body weak, and his fate uncertain. The hero who once defied death now struggles with a wound that will never fully heal, and dreams of a name that haunts him, yet he cannot remember. Who is Patroclus? Why does his heart ache at the thought of him? In part 1, Achilles, the great Greek warrior, was struck in the heel by an arrow shot by Paris during the final battle at Troy. The god Apollo, sensing that Achilles' fate should not end there, intervened, placing him into a deep coma to preserve his life. Automedon and Ajax, his loyal companions, swapped his body with that of a Trojan warrior, deceiving the enemy and escaping the battlefield in a perilous chase. They brought Achilles to a hidden cave on Mount Ida, where Chiron, the wise centaur who had once been his teacher, began tending to his grievous wound. When Achilles awoke, he had no memory of who he was or the events that had transpired. His mind was blank, his body weak, and the wound on his heel still throbbed with pain. His life now hung in the balance between survival and death, haunted by vague dreams of a dear friend he could not name. Before we uncover Achilles' fate, make sure to subscribe and join us on this mythological journey. The cold cave on Mount Ida. The faint light from the crackling fire in the cave illuminated Achilles' pale face. He lay on a flat stone, his body motionless, his eyes wide open, staring at the dark ceiling of the cave. The wound on his heel, where Paris's arrow had pierced, still oozed black blood, though Chiron had carefully bandaged it with herbs and linen soaked in sacred spring water. Pain, like a smoldering fire, spread through his body, but what tormented him more was the emptiness in his mind. He did not know who he was, could not remember anything beyond fragmented memories, a warm laugh, a pair of familiar eyes, and then darkness. Chiron, the old centaur with silver horsehair and eyes gleaming with wisdom, stood beside him, his calloused hands gently massaging Achilles' leg. He muttered ancient prayers, calling upon the gods of Olympus, hoping they would bless the healing of the wound cursed by Apollo's guided arrow. "You are Achilles," Chiron said, his voice deep and certain, "son of Thetis, the greatest warrior of Greece. But now, you are just a lost man." Each day passed in an endless cycle of pain and silence. Chiron applied medicine, changed bandages, and told him stories of glorious feats: the siege of Troy, the bloody battles by the river Scamander, and the deep friendship with Patroclus. But to Achilles, they were like legends of a stranger. He clenched his fists, trying to summon an image, a feeling. But all was void. Dreams of Patroclus. As night fell, and the cold wind from Mount Ida blew through the cave entrance, Achilles sank into a restless sleep. In the darkness of his mind, an image slowly emerged. A young man with disheveled black hair and eyes bright like fire smiled at him. "Achilles," the man called, his voice gentle but tinged with regret. Achilles jolted, reaching out to touch the face, but his hand grasped only air. The man vanished, leaving a deep ache in Achilles' chest, a pain of loss he could not explain. The dream repeated, night after night. Sometimes he saw himself standing on a blood-soaked field, holding a crimson-stained spear, with the man lying motionless on the ground. "Patroclus," he whispered in his dream, the name slipping from the depths of his soul without thought. When he awoke, he gasped for breath, sweat streaming down his forehead. "Who is Patroclus?" he asked Chiron, his voice hoarse. The centaur looked at him, his eyes sad. "He was your friend, the one you cherished more than life itself. You lost him at Troy." Chiron's words pierced Achilles' heart like a dagger. He did not remember Patroclus, but the pain was so real he could not deny it. It became a smoldering flame within him, urging him to find himself again, though he did not know where to begin. The appearance of Thetis. One morning, as dawn broke, the air in the cave suddenly grew strangely warm. A shimmering silver light appeared, and from within it, Thetis, Achilles' mother, emerged. She was as beautiful as moonlight, her sea-green hair flowing like waves, her eyes sparkling with pride and sorrow. "My son," she said, her voice as soft as waves lapping the shore. Achilles looked at her, not recognizing her, but a vague sense of familiarity stirred within him. "I pleaded with the gods to keep you alive," Thetis continued, her hands gently touching his face. "This wound is the price of the immortality I once bestowed upon you. But your fate is not yet sealed. Be patient, Achilles. Your strength will return and you will find your path." She smiled, but her smile was tinged with sadness. "I cannot stay long, but remember that I am always watching over you." As Thetis vanished, Achilles felt a small spark of hope ignite in his heart. Her words did not restore his memory, but they gave him a purpose: to survive, to recover, and to discover the fate she spoke of. He clenched his fists, determined to overcome the physical pain and the emptiness in his soul. The aid of the nymphs day by day, Achilles received care not only from Chiron, but also from the nymphs of Mount Ida. They appeared in the afternoons, their skin glistening like water, their smiles as gentle as a spring breeze. The nymphs brought vials of medicine made from rare herbs grown on the mountaintop, drops of sacred spring water from Olympus, and songs as soothing as the whisper of trees. "We are sent by Apollo," one nymph named Irene said, her voice clear as a bell. "He wishes for you to live, Achilles, to fulfill the destiny fate has set." The cool, sacred water flowed over his wound, easing the burning pain. The herbs, ground and applied to his heel, brought a numbing sensation, helping him gradually regain feeling in his damaged foot. Under the care of Chiron and the nymphs, the wound began to heal, though it left a permanent weakness. His heel would never be the same, always aching whenever he moved too vigorously. The nymphs healed not only his body, but also offered solace to his soul. They spoke of the beauty of Mount Ida, the crystal-clear streams, and the mysterious forests. Though his memory remained a void, their stories helped him forget his despair, if only for a moment. The journey of recovery. Time passed, and Achilles began to feel the changes in his body. Under Chiron's guidance, he attempted to stand, though each step was a painful challenge. His injured heel made him limp, but he gritted his teeth and persevered, refusing to surrender to fate. One day, Chiron handed him an old spear, its wooden shaft worn but its steel tip still sharp. "Try holding it," he said. Achilles grasped it, a strange familiarity rising in his palm. He swung the spear, his movements clumsy but powerful, causing the air in the cave to whistle. Chiron nodded. "Good. Your body remembers even if your mind does not." From then on, Achilles trained daily, starting with simple movements and gradually advancing to more complex ones. He learned to adapt to the weakness in his heel, relying on the strength of his arms and his remaining agility. Under the pale sunlight filtering through the cave entrance, he sweated, his muscles straining, and bit by bit, his former strength returned. The nymphs watched from a distance, clapping in encouragement, their smiles like guiding lights. Confronting anger, but not every day was progress. There were times when helplessness and pain brought Achilles to his knees. One afternoon, as he tried to walk without a crutch, a sharp pain shot through his heel, causing him to collapse to the ground. Rage flared like a wildfire. He pounded his fist against the stone, shouting, "Who am I? Why must I endure this?" His cry echoed through the cave, shaking the walls. Chiron approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Anger is your strength, Achilles, but also your greatest enemy. Learn to master it, or it will consume you before you can reclaim yourself." He recounted the story of Achilles' wrath at Troy, how he had dragged Hector's body around the city to avenge Patroclus. "You once let anger guide you, and it led you to the brink of death. Do not let it happen again." Each time anger arose, he closed his eyes, remembering Thetis' gentle voice and Patroclus' faint smile from his dreams. Preparing for the return. After many months, Achilles was no longer the weak man lying on the stone slab. He stood tall, though still limping, his muscles firm once more under the sunlight. He wielded the spear with astonishing precision, each thrust carrying the shadow of a great warrior from the past. Chiron observed, his eyes gleaming with hope. "You are ready," he said. "Not to become the Achilles of old, but a new Achilles, stronger, wiser." The nymphs brought an old set of armor that Automedon and Ajax had left behind. The bronze armor, though scarred from many battles, still exuded majesty. Achilles donned it, feeling the familiar weight on his shoulders. He took up his shield and spear, standing at the cave entrance, gazing out at the vast forest of Mount Ida. A strong wind blew, carrying the whisper of fate. "I will return," he said, his voice deep and resolute, like a vow to the gods. "Those who cast me into darkness will pay. My honor will be restored." Chiron placed a hand on his shoulder, nodding. "Go, Achilles, fate awaits you." Stepping out of the cave. The day Achilles left the cave, the sky was clear, and brilliant sunlight bathed the peak of Mount Ida. The nymphs stood in a line, singing a farewell song, their voices blending like the murmur of streams. Chiron gave him a pouch of herbs and a flask of sacred water, instructing, "Stay healthy, and do not forget what you have learned here. Strength lies not only in the spear, but also in the heart." Achilles walked away, each step a declaration of war against fate. Though his heel still ached, he did not let it hinder him. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, recovering his memory, confronting his enemies, and fulfilling his vow of revenge. But in his heart now burned not only anger, but also a fierce belief in himself, forged through the months in the cave. As his figure disappeared into the forest, Chiron stood silently, whispering, "May the gods guide you, Achilles." On Mount Olympus, Thetis smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. Achilles' journey had only just begun. Thank you for following Achilles' path of survival and rediscovery. Will he reclaim his lost memories, or will he be forever haunted by a name he cannot remember? Subscribe now to continue this legendary tale and explore the deepest myths of Greek history. Let us know in the comments what moment moved you the most: Achilles' pain, his dreams, or the gods' intervention?